There is a kind of exhaustion that doesn't stem from work, nor from lack of sleep. It arises from living as someone you are not. Day after day, you don the roles assigned to you by society, family, or the unseen rules that govern existence. And then one day, the cracks begin to show. Not loudly, but enough to make you feel everything trembling. Achievements no longer taste sweet, relationships grow distant, and a persistent call from within starts to echo. Carl Jung believed that, at some point, every person faces an inner crossroads. To continue living according to a pre-written script, or to embark on the journey of individuation, the path to becoming your true self, no matter the cost. So what truly happens when you finally choose yourself, not just on the surface of consciousness, but in the depths of the unconscious? In today's video, we will unravel the journey of individuation through Carl Jung's lens, from recognizing the roles that bind you to the moment you live as the living symbol of your truth. And you will see why, when that choice is made, not only does your life transform, but the world around you begins to shift as well. But be warned, this is not a fairy tale. Choosing yourself means accepting loss and facing truths you've avoided your entire life. Yet, in that very moment, you discover a kind of freedom and strength that nothing else can grant you. Number 1. How have we not chosen ourselves? There is a silent paradox that governs modern life. Most of us believe we are freely choosing, but in reality, we are living as characters in someone else's story. Like an actor stumbling into a pre-written play, we learn our lines from childhood, rehearse the expressions the audience expects, and when the curtain falls, we stand alone, unsure of who we are. Carl Jung called this the persona, the social mask, created to help us survive in the crowd, but which gradually becomes a prison. From a young age, we learn to adjust ourselves to be loved and accepted. If you were the obedient child who made your parents proud, you learned that love comes from doing the right thing. If you hid your tears because boys don't cry or girls must be gentle, you learned to bury your emotions. And each time you did so, a piece of your soul was carved away, as if someone were wielding a knife to sculpt a statue, chipping off fragments to make it beautiful by others' standards. We grow up with an unspoken script in our minds. If I meet enough expectations, I will be loved. If I please others, I will be safe. But in that safety, your true self is suffocated. Like a bird raised in a golden cage, you have enough food, enough water, and no fear of storms, but you'll never know the scent of the wind on a mountaintop or how vast the sky beyond truly is. Jung spoke of the parts of ourselves we reject, calling them the shadow. He didn't see the shadow as an enemy to be destroyed, but as the abandoned part of our being, holding both our weaknesses and untapped potential. The problem is that when we don't choose ourselves, we hand control of our lives to the persona, the social mask, and banish the shadow to the basement of the unconscious. In that darkness, it lingers like a child locked away, yearning to be seen, heard, and acknowledged. The basement of the unconscious there, suppressed memories, abandoned dreams and emotions deemed unacceptable remain as alive as ever. They don't die. They wait for their chance to surge upward. And when that basement door opens, sometimes triggered by an unexpected event, they flood in fiercely, overwhelming you. That's why many describe an inner awakening as a storm, as everything long imprisoned rushes into consciousness at once. Ironically, society often teaches us to manage or suppress these signals rather than listen to them. We drink coffee to push through exhaustion, watch movies to escape loneliness, or bury ourselves in work to avoid the question, "Who am I?" But the shadow doesn't vanish by being ignored. Instead, it gathers energy, and when no other way remains, it forces you to face it. This is when life's breaking points occur: divorce, quitting a job, upending an entire lifestyle, moments many see as mistakes, but which are your true self finally reclaiming its voice. The danger is that when you don't choose yourself, you may still feel like you're living fine, like someone who's lost their sense of smell, believing the room is clean until someone opens a window and the stench pours in. You won't notice the betrayal of yourself until one day, an event, a breakup, a loss, a crisis, flings open that basement door, and all the rejected parts of you demand to be seen. Look at the sensible decisions you've made, choosing a stable career your parents approved of instead of one you loved, staying in a relationship because everyone says you're a perfect couple, working a high-paying job while waking each morning with a body heavy with dread. Those choices, wrapped in logic and responsibility, were moments you turned your back on yourself. We call it growing up. But sometimes it's just learning to betray our true selves more skillfully. Not choosing yourself is like using someone else's password to log into a social media account. You have access, you can scroll through photos, read messages, and even post updates. But every image, every status, every connection, they don't belong to you. You're living in someone else's digital story, and no matter how hard you try, you can't truly call it your life. Take my friend, for example. After graduating, she landed a managerial role at her cousin's renowned restaurant. She told herself, "I'm successful, with a solid income and a reputable name." But in truth, it was her cousin's account. The clients, the relationships, everything in that restaurant reflected him, not her. One evening, after the last guests left, she sat at the bar, opened her phone to post a proud of my work photo on social media. But as she scrolled through her gallery, she realized every image belonged to others, colleagues, customers, events where she stood on the sidelines. Her finger froze. In that silent moment, she saw clearly. Though she was running everything, she was still living someone else's story. In Jungian psychology, when the persona takes full control, the ego begins to identify so completely with the role that it forgets that a deeper self ever existed. We no longer distinguish between the real me and the me playing a part. This is why many in midlife face what's called a midlife crisis. It's not that they suddenly change, it's that for years they never chose themselves, and now their soul refuses to stay caged any longer. The cost of not choosing yourself isn't just personal loss. It seeps quietly into every relationship. When you live falsely, you force others to love an inauthentic version of you. And when they return that affection, you still feel empty, because deep down you know they don't love the real you, they love the mask. The recognition you receive doesn't touch your soul because it's not for you, it's for a role. And here's the most terrifying truth. If you live your entire life without choosing yourself, you will die without ever having met yourself. Not in some vague philosophical sense, but literally, you will leave this world with an unanswered question. If I had lived authentically from the start, how different would everything have been? But before you ask that question, you must find the courage to admit that, until now, you haven't truly chosen yourself. Number 2. Choosing yourself. Not an act, but a transformative ritual. When you've peered into the basement and realized the shadow is still there, the hardest part isn't seeing it. It's deciding to open the door and step inside. We often think choosing ourselves is a simple decision. Changing jobs, ending a relationship, or starting a personal project. But according to Jung, these surface actions are merely the outcomes of a far deeper movement, a transformative ritual that the soul must undergo to move from being consumed by the persona to uniting with the self. Choosing yourself isn't like flipping a channel on a remote. It's like leaving a house you've lived in your entire life, where every brick, every window, every framed picture was arranged to make you feel safe. To step outside, you must accept that the sky may be full of storms, but it's that same sky that gives you a chance to witness her life as the good daughter, the perfect wife, the sacrificing mother. One day, she realizes she's exhausted and empty. She decides to choose herself at first by making time for her hobbies or saying no to overwhelming demands. But the real journey begins when she dares to face the fear of being seen as selfish, when she confronts the guilt of not meeting others' expectations. In the moment she touches these emotions without running away, the transformative ritual is unfolding. It's crucial to understand, choosing yourself isn't a single decisive act, but a series of repeated commitments made every day. Each time you stand at the crossroads between truth and comfort, between being honest with yourself and pleasing others, you're invited to partake in this ritual again. And with each crossing, you take another step toward the self, the complete center of who you are. Imagine your soul as an ancient temple, overgrown with thick vines. Choosing yourself is the ritual of cutting away those vines. At first, light only seeps through small cracks, but over time, the entire temple is freed, and you realize its pristine beauty was never gone. It was merely obscured. The external changes, a new job, new relationships, and a new lifestyle, are just the tip of the iceberg. The submerged part is the inner rebirth, where you're no longer driven by fear, but by the call of truth. Jung emphasized that the goal of individuation isn't to become a better version of yourself by society's standards, but to become whole, where light and shadow, reason and emotion, conscious and unconscious, merge into a vibrant whole. The ritual of choosing yourself is the gateway to that state. On a deeper level, this ritual is an act of reclaiming sovereignty over the territory of your soul. If the unconscious is like a vast kingdom, for years you've allowed external forces, family, society, norms, to rule, set laws, build fences, and raise a flag that isn't yours. Choosing yourself isn't just about cleaning or renovating the inner castle. It's about lowering that foreign flag, raising your own, and declaring, "From now on, this place is mine." Modern psychology has a related concept, authorship of one's life. It suggests that, as we mature psychologically, we must rewrite our life story from an inner starting point, not just continue the chapter others began. Jung goes further. He says this process isn't just rewriting the story, but letting the true narrator, the self, speak, rather than the ego, the persona, or borrowed archetypes doing the talking. Here's a subtle point. This ritual doesn't only unfold on the level of conscious thought, but also the symbolic plane. The unconscious doesn't speak in words, it speaks in images, dreams, and metaphors. This is why, during this journey, you may start having strange dreams, meeting a lost loved one, entering an unfamiliar forest, or seeing a guiding animal. These dreams aren't random. They're the secret rituals your mind performs to guide you, step by step, from the old territory into a more whole state. From a mythological perspective, the ritual of choosing yourself resembles the hero's journey. You leave the familiar village, traverse dark forests, encounter strange creatures, face trials, and return with a treasure. Here, the treasure is your true self. But Jung reminds us that unlike fairy tales, this journey has no clear ending. Each cycle of life invites you to undergo this ritual again, at a deeper, more refined level. You might choose yourself the first time by walking away from a toxic relationship. Years later, you're called to choose yourself again by leaving a stable job that's killing your creativity. And at the deepest level, you choose yourself by no longer reacting from fear, but living from a state of absolute trust in your inner guidance. This ritual isn't linear. It's a downward spiral, each loop bringing you closer to your center. The deeper you go, the more you realize that choosing yourself was never a rebellion against the external world. In truth, it's a reunion between you and yourself, between the conscious and the unconscious, between light and shadow, between the individual and the collective soul Jung called the collective unconscious. Thus, when you stand at the threshold of this ritual, understand that you're not merely changing your life. You're shifting the orbit of your entire inner world. And when the inner world changes course, the outer world cannot remain the same. If what I've shared stirs something within you, continue this journey with us, for the upcoming parts will open even more windows to help you understand yourself better. Please subscribe and save this channel, so when you're ready to take the next step, the path will be here waiting for you. Number 3. Who are you when you are no longer someone others want you to be? And then, when the ritual of choosing yourself has carried you through the door of the old, you step into an unfamiliar land, a vast, unmapped void. There are no longer others' signposts, no stage lights illuminating your face, no applause or criticism. There is only you standing before a simple yet weighty question. Who am I if I am not the smile because they've witnessed the same beautiful moment. Or when you sit silently with a loved one, yet feel a profound sense of fullness. Psychologically, when you touch the self, you're also touching the collective unconscious, the realm of images, symbols, and archetypes that have existed for thousands of years. This explains why, when you live authentically, you can inspire others without even trying. You don't inspire with rallying cries, but by living as a living symbol. Someone who dares to be themselves not only liberates themselves, but also unconsciously permits others to do the same. A story from a remarkable woman who follows our channel may help illustrate this. She was a woman who dedicated 40 years of her life to rice fields and caring for her grandchildren in a coastal village in central Vietnam. When her children moved out, the empty courtyard, once filled only with bare earth, became a silent void she had never known. One afternoon, she bought a few packets of flower seeds, a faint dream from her busy days, and began planting. The next season, her courtyard bloomed vibrantly, attracting bees and butterflies, with fragrances wafting through the narrow alley. Neighbors soon came to ask for seeds and planted their own. Before long, the paths leading to the village were awash with color. She received no awards, no titles, but each morning, seeing children laughing among the flower beds, she knew she had quietly woven a beautiful thread into the shared fabric of her village. When you choose yourself and touch the whole, you also change how you respond to the world. Situations that once triggered you no longer hit the same old buttons inside, because you know who you are and where you stand. Anger ceases to flare as a defensive reflex and becomes a clear signal for conscious action. Sadness is no longer a bottomless pit, but a river that flows through, leaving stillness once it reaches the other side. Touching the whole, in another sense, is entering what modern psychology calls self-transcendence. Maslow, known for his hierarchy of needs, later added that beyond self-actualization lies a higher level, living not just for yourself, but for something greater. Jung would agree, but he'd say this isn't about abandoning the ego. Instead, it's when a healed ego merges into a broader current, becoming a doorway to the wisdom of the whole. Biologically, imagine this journey as a cell in the body, realizing it's not just a solitary cell, but part of the entire organism. When it's healthy, the whole system thrives. When it's sick, the body suffers. Choosing yourself, here, is like a cell ensuring its integrity to contribute to the integrity of the entire human organism. Fascinatingly, neuroscience studies show that during deep states like meditation, immersive creativity, or unconditional love, brain activity shifts from the default mode network to broader interconnected regions, fostering a sense of oneness with everything. This is scientific evidence that the harmony between the ego and the whole is not just a philosophical idea, but a tangible biological state. And in that state, your actions take on a symbolic rather than merely functional quality. A word, a touch, a creation you make can become a code that the collective unconscious receives, like a small stone dropped into a lake, creating ripples that spread far. You no longer need to strive to change the world, because the way you exist is already a change. Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." When you've chosen yourself and merged with the whole, every encounter becomes an opportunity for transformation, for both you and the other. You don't approach them to take, nor to give from sacrifice, but from a state of fullness, where giving and receiving happen as naturally as breathing. This also transforms your relationship with life. You no longer feel the need to race or possess to prove your worth, because you found it within. When you stop clinging to what's fleeting, you can open your hands to receive what's truly meant for you and let go of what has served its purpose. This is a freedom no societal definition or personal achievement can grant. Perhaps the most profound realization in touching the whole is that every personal journey carries a collective meaning. Your courage to live authentically isn't just your story. It's a piece of our shared evolution. By healing yourself, you stop passing old wounds onto others. By stepping out of the persona, you become a reminder that every person has the right to be themselves, and that the whole is only truly complete when each individual within it lives fully. If this stirs a personal experience, a moment when you felt that deep sense of belonging, hold on to it. Perhaps capture it with a small symbol, a short note, or a shared thought to remind yourself that you've been here, that you've remembered who you are. The end of this journey isn't a destination with dazzling fireworks or resounding cheers, but a quiet moment where you can hear your heartbeat align with the pulse of the world. It doesn't arrive like a bolt of lightning, but slips into your life like the effort accumulates power through consistency. This is enduring power, unaccompanied by fanfare, yet yielding unmistakable results. Silence also wields its social power. In conversation, the silent one often holds invisible control, for silence compels others to fill the void, to speculate, to project their own images onto you. Well-timed silence not only renders you enigmatic, but amplifies the weight of your message manifold. Just as in music, the spaces between notes craft the melody. If everything were continuous sound, the piece would dissolve into chaos. It is silence that gives sound its meaning. And in life, silence that lends words their value. Yet the power of silence extends beyond the personal or social. It is the bridge to the spiritual realm, to the mysterious depths of the psyche. Across traditions, from Christianity to Buddhism, Sufism to Zen, silence is revered as the path to ultimate reality. Jung, with his fascination for spiritual symbols and myths, saw that silence is not merely a skill, but a gateway. Crossing that threshold, the individual transcends the petty ego, opening to a vast connection with the collective unconscious, the repository of humanity's ancestral wisdom. Imagine sitting before a still lake. If the surface is rippled by wind or voices, you see only chaotic waves. But when the water lies calm, it becomes a mirror, reflecting the entire sky. The human mind is the same. Only in silence does it turn into a clear mirror, reflecting the truths of the universe. This is why silence is power. It not only allows control over emotions, aids wise action, but also unlocks connection to a profound layer of reality that words can never touch. And perhaps you too have known such a moment, when silence became the mirror, illuminating what you long dared not face. If so, leave a sign in the comments below. An experience, a memory, or simply a concise phrase. Who knows, your silence might awaken someone still seeking themselves. Thus, stillness is never weakness. It is not retreat, but the gathering of energy. Not evasion, but a form of courage, the courage to forego proof, to confront oneself, and to touch truth. In silence, you do not lose power. So before every hasty response, try 3 deliberate breaths and survey the whole. That is the pause button returning choice to your hands. Part 2. Focusing on oneself is not selfishness, but awakening. But that power holds meaning only when directed rightly, inward, toward the personal journey. This is where so many misunderstand. They deem self-focus as selfishness, neglecting others, and placing the ego above all. Yet Jung would tell you, it is not selfishness, but awakening. For only by becoming yourself can you truly be present for others. We are conditioned by a society that exalts sacrifice, where self-forgetfulness is deemed noble. From childhood, we are taught to think of the collective, to put the common good first. It all sounds right, but taken to extremes, it turns us into shadows of ourselves. We give until depleted, strain to please everyone, and one day awaken to find ourselves strangers in our own lives. This is the affliction Jung called the loss of the authentic self, leaving only the social mask, the persona. Focusing on oneself does not mean withdrawing into selfishness, but returning to reconnect with one's own center. Imagine you are an ancient tree. If you do not nourish your roots with soil, water, and light, you cannot offer shade to anyone. A tree cannot say, "I need no soil, I only need to shelter others." The truth is, it must draw sustenance, nurture itself first, And that is not selfishness, it is the law of survival. Humans are no different. If you neglect your inner world, fail to build your own growth, you will soon exhaust yourself and succumb to spiritual burnout, the state now termed burnout. A real-world example. Consider mothers who strain endlessly for their children. They work ceaselessly, sacrifice personal hobbies, and even overlook their own health. Such love is admirable, but do you see how many children grow up insecure? For they sense their mother's fatigue and tension, and their subconscious learns that love means endurance, self-sacrifice. In contrast, a mother who tends to herself maintaining balance imparts a different lesson. Love means living fully with oneself, to radiate peace to others. This is the point Jung emphasized. Self-focus generates radiating power, not selfishness. Modern psychology reinforces this. Studies on self-regulation show that those who prioritize their inner needs exhibit better emotional control, wiser decisions, and healthier relationships. Conversely, those who perpetually ignore themselves to appease others fall prey to anxiety, depression, and feelings of exploitation. They believe they live altruistically, but in truth, they dwell in the bondage of fear of rejection, unloved, unaccepted. Jung called this the dominance of the shadow. When you continually suppress your needs, that rejected part does not vanish. It burrows into the unconscious, growing stronger until it erupts as anger, turn your wounds into wisdom. This is vivid proof of self-focus's power after a crisis. And it is not only the great figures who tread this path. It might be an ordinary man who lost his job after years of company loyalty. Initially, the shock plunged him into confusion and disorientation. But instead of wallowing in resentment, he chose time for reflection. Learning a new skill, exercising regularly, journaling daily to grasp his emotions. A year later, he not only secured a better job, but also emerged more confident, resilient, and intentional in living. Self-focus is both revolutionary and healing. Revolutionary as it shatters old patterns, living for others' gazes, for approval, for praise. Healing, as it grants the chance to mend bonds with your own soul. When you invest energy in yourself, you begin to sense small joys more keenly, rediscover forgotten creativity, and claim the peace you long thought undeserved. And from that moment, you can step outward and be fully present with others. You no longer give love from fear of loss, but from abundance. You no longer help for recognition, but because it flows naturally from a whole soul. This is the fundamental difference between selfishness and awakening. Selfishness stems from scarcity, awakening from abundance. And only through self-focus can you journey from scarcity to abundance. And perhaps this is the moment you grant yourself a pause. Try sitting still, drawing a deep breath and asking, which true part of you are you living from, and how much remains mere performance for others? Are you giving from wholeness or from depletion? Do not rush to answer. Simply sit with the question, for sometimes silence alone unlocks answers that 1,000 words cannot yield. As Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Life's greatest privilege is not being loved by many, but becoming oneself. Every path to truth, to love, to peace begins there. Part 3. Why do things start to fall into place when you are silent and focused? And then, as you gradually live in alignment with that true self, a strange phenomenon begins to unfold. The external world seems to mirror the changes within you. What once appeared coincidental becomes meaningful. Knots untie themselves, and you realize that everything starts to fall into place because you have shifted your own energy field. Carl Jung had a famous concept, synchronicity, the phenomenon of meaningful coincidence. He believed that when a person enters deep harmony with their inner world, the outer world begins to rearrange itself to reflect that change. You might call it a coincidence, but for Jung, it is the resonance between the inner and outer realms. Just as when you tune an instrument, all the other notes in the orchestra naturally find harmony. When you are silent and focused, you are tuning yourself. And from there, life begins to become an ordered symphony. Recall a time in your life when your mind was in turmoil, when you were pulled into countless distractions, arguments, and anxieties. At that moment, everything around you also became chaotic. Relationships strained, work faltered, friends drifted away. Conversely, there are times when you are focused, clear, and consistent in action, and you find life opening doors. You encounter the right people, the right opportunities, at the right moments. This is not mere chance. Psychology calls it the reticular activating system, RAS, a filtering mechanism of the brain. When you focus on something, the RAS automatically brings related opportunities, information and connections into your field of vision. In other words, when you change within, the world outside changes accordingly, because your brain has been reprogrammed to perceive the new order. Jung went beyond neuroscience. He believed that our personal unconscious is connected to a collective unconscious, a shared energy field of humanity. And when we live in alignment with our inner essence, we resonate with this field, causing what suits us to naturally appear. This is why those who live authentically often have strong intuition, encountering strange serendipities that others cannot explain. But in truth, it is the reflection from the inner world onto the outer. Imagine a mirror. When it is covered in dust, the image you see is distorted and blurry. But when you wipe away the dust, the reflection becomes clear. Life is the same. When you are dominated by noise and distraction, what you attract is chaos. But when you are silent, focused, you are wiping clean the inner mirror. And immediately the reflected world becomes clear, luminous. Things fall into place, not because the world suddenly changes, but because you have changed your perspective, your way of interacting with it. A familiar example. Have you ever noticed that when you decide to buy a certain car, suddenly you see that model everywhere? This is not because suddenly more people are buying the same car as you, but because your mind has been tuned to notice it. Life operates the same way. When you focus on personal growth, you begin to see opportunities, relationships, and paths that serve that journey. What you focus on expands. This is a fundamental principle of both psychology and Jungian philosophy. The key here is life begins to align not through some mystical arrangement from outside, but as the natural consequence of a soul that has found inner order. Like a small boat in the ocean. When the rudder is loose, the boat is easily swept aimlessly by waves. daring to enter the dark to find light. And this is the wonder. Once you step into depth, you are no longer swayed by surface things. Petty comparisons, criticisms, and vain desires lose their weight. Instead, you feel solidly grounded. You are no longer a leaf blown by the wind, but the root of your own life tree. From here, what you do, what you say, carries new weight, the weight of one who has touched depth. Thus, silence and focus are not merely life skills. They are the gateway leading you out of the turbulent surface into the land where transformation occurs. The gateway opens to meet your own shadow and reconcile with it. The gateway to inner unity, where every scattered piece is assembled into a whole self. This is why Jung once said, "Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart." Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. One who only looks outward forever chases vague dreams. One who dares to turn inward, silent, focused, awakens. And that awakening not only changes how you see life, but changes life itself. As you reach the end of this journey, what lingers is not the applause of the masses, but the steady rhythm of an inner world that has found its footing. Transformation needs no fireworks. It grows quietly like roots sinking deep into soil, a little each day, unshowy but enduring. From the moment you accept slowing down to listen, life begins to change its grammar. Words soften, choices unhurry, and presence deepens. Others see it before you can even explain. A new day can thus begin differently. Instead of rushing affirmations, you allow yourself minutes of quiet to align your state. Instead of hasty retorts, you breathe deeply and recognize the rising emotion. Instead of chasing flattering labels, you let actions do the introducing. That softening is not a compromise. It is the dignity of one who has found a center to return to after every great wind. Of course, the path promises no ease, but that unease becomes worthy tuition for the solidity. You know where you stand and why. From that foundation, connections self-purify, work clarifies, and time ceases wasting on performances. You no longer need to stage an image. You simply live in your true rhythm. When your rhythm harmonizes, results know how to speak. If these lines touch you, leave yourself a small marker. Save this piece as a gentle reminder each time the world pulls you outward. And if you wish to journey with content that goes straight to depth rather than noisy surface, hit like and subscribe as a quiet pact with yourself. Each time distracted, I will turn inward before stepping forward. Not to count numbers, but to build an anchor when needed to recall the way. Have you ever noticed that most of the time in life, we live as if we are in a courtroom? Every action, every emotion, even our silence requires justification. I'm tired because there's too much work. I won't join because my family is busy. Everything becomes evidence we must submit to prove that we have the right to exist. But what would happen if one day you stopped? No more explanations. It is precisely that silence that opens a turning point. You begin to touch a profound source of strength, where you are no longer defined by the gaze of others, but by your own truth. Carl Jung once emphasized, change does not come from adding more masks, but from daring to take them off. And stopping the constant need to explain is the first door out of the invisible prison of judgment. In today's video, we will explore that journey from the awkward moment of silence to when the mask falls, boundaries are drawn, and finally, your full presence emerges. This is not just a communication skill, but an inner transformation that can change your entire life. Are you ready to discover what happens when you stop explaining? Number 1. The illness of explaining and the invisible prison from childhood. Have you noticed that even when no one asks, we still justify how we feel, the decisions we make, our silences, and even the empty spaces in our lives? As if simply being me is not enough. We say, "Sorry, I'm a bit tired today. I'm not angry, I just need some time." It all sounds polite, but if you look deeper, it resembles a deeply rooted habit. The fear of being misunderstood, rejected, or abandoned. Carl Jung once warned, "The compulsion to explain is not a sign of kindness, but of a wound." Behind every justification lies a silent plea. Please don't leave me. Please grant me the right to exist. And that turns us into prisoners in an invisible jail, where the chains are not iron, but the gaze, expectations, and judgments of others. Think back to a normal day. Perhaps you come home from work exhausted and want to lie down. Instead of simply doing so, you tell your husband, your children, or your friends, "Work was too stressful today, so I don't want to go out." Reasonable? Yes. But why can't you just say, "I need to rest"? Why must your mind conjure a courtroom where you present evidence and arguments to prove that you have the right to be tired? This is not rare. In one sharing session, a grown woman choked up as she confessed, "I've never dared to frankly say no to my husband or friends. Every time I don't want to go or do something, I invent an excuse. Too much work, health not good, and so on. I've never dared to say I simply want to be alone. I'm afraid they'll think I'm heartless, selfish, or cold." Her words revealed a truth. Explanations had become her armor for self-protection, but also chains binding her to the fear of abandonment. If you look deeper, this habit rarely starts in adulthood. It is sown in childhood. Remember the familiar lines. "Stop crying. It's nothing to fuss about." "Don't be so sensitive. It's just a tiny thing." "You must be good to be loved." To adults, just passing remarks. But to a child, they were sentences. The child learned that their emotions were wrong, shameful. To be loved, they had to present, persuade, and rationalize their sadness, fear, and anger. you want to be, or because you can't find a good enough reason to speak. You don't know if you agree because you want to, or because you fear rejection if you lack a convincing explanation. This is why some people, even successful and praised, feel empty. They've lived too long in the invisible prison of explaining, forgetting the true voice of their soul. If you see yourself caught in this spiral, dare to share your story. Perhaps your honesty will light a spark for someone else, that they too have the right to live true to their feelings and choices. And once you see those invisible bars clearly, a natural question arises. If we keep living in this prison of explanations, what price will we pay? A price not just of minor discomforts, but of the slow erosion of our connection to ourselves. Number 2. The price of constantly explaining. At first glance, explaining seems harmless. It makes us appear polite, considerate, mindful of others' feelings. But if you observe closely, repeated over time, it corrodes inner wholeness. Carl Jung believed people don't lose themselves through a single major event, but through small repeated acts. Each time we justify our feelings or decisions, we contribute to estrangement from the true self. The first cost is loss of direction. By explaining too much, we gradually lose the ability to distinguish what we genuinely want from what we do just to please others. The difference may be small at first, but repeated, it becomes harder to tell our own desires from choices governed by fear of judgment. The result? Living in confusion, always needing others' approval to confirm we're on the right path. The second cost is false relationships. Initially, explanations make things smooth. Friends think you always have reasonable excuses. Colleagues see you as easy to negotiate with. Family believes you care. But this smoothness is only a thin coat of paint. Inside, you know you are not yourself. This smoothness is bought at a high price. Self-constraint. I remember a woman in Jungian therapy who said her husband often asked why she was sad. Each time she gave reasons to keep him from getting angry, work pressure, bad weather. But sometimes she was sad simply because she was sad, empty without reason. She didn't dare say it, afraid of seeming irrational. So instead of being loved in truth, she was loved for plausible excuses. That's not love that nourishes authenticity. It's conditional love, where she must perform rationality to maintain acceptance. The third, deeper cost is self-abandonment. This is the pain Jung called self-abandonment. Each unnecessary explanation sends yourself a hidden message. Your feelings are not valid enough. They need a reason to exist. Repeated, it convinces you that you are never enough. You learn to doubt your feelings, your intuition, and finally, your very presence. Think back to mornings in the mirror. Instead of a familiar face, you see questions. If I'm tired today, how will I explain? If I decline that invitation, what reason will I give? In that very moment, you abandon yourself again. Day by day, that abandonment dries you out inside. This is a silent tragedy many don't see. Society praises those who are easygoing, well-mannered, considerate, but rarely asks, are they still connected to themselves? Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That fate is a normal life, but normal here means not living truly. I once knew a friend seen as the easiest in the group. She nodded to nearly every invitation, helped anyone who asked, never upset anyone. But gradually she realized she no longer enjoyed those relationships. Inside she was tired, but hid it with a smile, angry but concealed it. One day she saw she was drifting away from herself. That is the heaviest cost, inner withering, the loss of feeling alive. You may think, isn't it better to just explain a little, keep things smooth? But the problem is, this smoothness doesn't last. As your inner dryness grows, exhaustion leaks out as depression, anxiety, insomnia, meaninglessness. You may laugh in crowds, but feel empty at home. You may utter hundreds of explanations, but feel no one truly understands you. How could they, when you no longer speak truth to yourself? The normal society praises may itself be tragedy. Normal means everyone is the same. Everyone explains to be loved, represses to be accepted, wears masks to keep peace. But that normal is not healthy. It is collective self-abandonment. And unless you realize it, you will pass day after day in lifeless stability, until one day you look back and see you lost years of true living just to be agreeable. The good news, once we dare to face it, we see clearly the price need not be paid forever. Recognizing it is the first step to liberation. Only by naming this loss do we gain the chance to reconnect with the self. The whole self that has always been waiting for us to return. And when you begin to realize the cost, naturally you'll want to try something new. For once, stop explaining. But what happens? It only needs to be. But to hear the self, you must brave the initial discomfort of silence. Like a room always filled with music, you're used to noise. The day you turn it off, it feels empty. But after a while, you hear the wind at the window, the birds outside. These sounds were always there, only masked by noise. In silence, real feelings clarify. Before, you were consumed with thinking what others needed to hear to accept you. Without that performance, you can ask yourself, what do I actually feel? Am I sad, tired, or simply wanting solitude? You'll be surprised to find emotions are simple. They only distort when we tie them to reasons. Practicing this, you'll notice a subtle shift. Your reactions soften. Where once you rushed to justify, now you pause for a few seconds. Those seconds change everything. From frantic proving, you move to calm clarity. The miracle. The more you sit in silence, the less you're swayed by others' gaze or judgment. I recall a meeting where a young colleague was challenged. Why did you choose this solution instead of that? Previously, he would panic, over-explain, fearing incompetence. But that day he paused, breathed, and simply said, "Because I believe it's the best fit here." No lengthy list. To everyone's surprise, the room fell silent. No one argued. His certainty came not from explanations, but from the inner ground he touched. Of course, change isn't instant. At first, others will be uncomfortable, even call you cold, difficult, uncooperative. But it's temporary. Gradually, they learn to accept a you who no longer justifies. More importantly, you learn to accept yourself, even if misunderstood. When energy no longer leaks outward for approval, you feel more vitality. No longer drained from chasing everyone's agreement, you channel it into creativity, intuition, what truly matters. Another sign, you start seeing the difference between reacting and responding. Before, you reacted like a machine, justifying instantly. Now you pause, breathe, and respond from stillness. That is responding, an intentional act from the self, not fear. Silence is not withdrawal, but the first turning point of self-ownership. From silence, you see you don't need to chase acceptance, you need only to be yourself. And that is the beginning of inner freedom, a freedom no one can grant or take away. If you've ever experienced such silence and felt inner power, leave a small signal in the comments. Write silent as your sign that you're ready to find strength in stillness instead of being lost in the world's noise. Number 4. When the mask falls, life becomes less exhausting. After moments of difficult silence, you realize a simple but powerful truth. You don't always need to explain. Each time you choose quiet, another mask layer falls. From here, new relief arises, something you never tasted while endlessly performing to please others. Carl Jung said the persona, the social mask, is not bad. It's necessary for survival in groups. The persona is the role we wear to fit family, work, or society. It helps us integrate and sustain relationships. The tragedy is when we identify with it so completely, we forget our true self. Constant explaining is one way we reinforce persona, becoming the agreeable version to others while depleting inner life. Only by daring to shed some of that mask can we breathe freely again. I recall a woman in group therapy. For years, each social gathering was armor. Always smiling, always soothing with explanations, controlling every gesture to avoid misunderstanding. People praised her tact, but inside she was drained. At home she had no energy left for herself. Only when she dared sit silently without excuses did she realize she didn't need to maintain the image so much. Once the mask fell, social encounters grew lighter, and for the first time, she still had energy left to live authentically. In Greek mythology, Persephone was abducted into the underworld by Hades. At first, she was terrified, pleading, explaining to return above. But over time, she accepted presence in the dark and discovered her strength. Persephone became queen of the underworld, not just a victim needing to explain to survive. Her image reminds us, when we stop struggling to prove innocence, when we let the mask fall, new power awakens. That power is the ability to live light and free, even in seemingly confining circumstances. Notice, constant explaining is like carrying a heavy backpack. Every conversation, every glance adds stones. By day's end, you're exhausted without knowing why. But when you stop explaining, the backpack is set down. You walk lighter, with energy for deep thought, creativity, nourishment of the soul. The body reacts too. Before, social encounters left you drained, collapsing in bed. Now, without performing, you feel less depleted. You can converse more freely, listen more, without worrying, what do they think? Energy once wasted on self-control under others' eyes returns to nurture you. Jung emphasized, one cannot be healthy living split between outer and inner. When the mask falls, you reconnect them. But redefines how others see and respect you. We grow in a society that prizes compliance. From childhood, many are taught that refusal is rude, selfish. When friends invite you, you must have a valid excuse to decline. When a family asks, you rarely say no directly. Instead, invent reasons. Over time, we believe we lack the right to simply say no. That refusal is valid only with justification. But the truth is, no is a complete answer. It needs no decoration, no accessories. When you stop explaining, you see boundaries are not built by logic, but upheld by consistency. One creative professional once shared that she was always exhausted from accepting too many projects. Even overloaded, she kept saying yes. If she refused, she offered many reasons: busy schedule, family matters, health issues. Strangely, the more she explained, the more clients negotiated, maneuvered to make her accept. The result? Her boundaries collapsed. One day in therapy, she practiced saying simply, "No, I can't take more." No reasons, no excuses. At first, the silence after made her tremble, heart pounding, afraid of seeming difficult or unprofessional. But to her surprise, the client accepted, moved on. It turned out what weakened her boundaries was not refusal, but prolonged explanations that opened room for intrusion. Carl Jung said true maturity comes when we take responsibility for our lives, not live to please others. Saying no is a clear sign of that maturity, like building a fence around your soul's garden, not to shut out the world, but to protect what matters most. Boundaries aren't brick walls. They're the space self needs to breathe. If you always leave doors open with reluctant yeses, you'll have no room left for yourself. But when you close them at the right times, you not only preserve energy, but teach others to respect that space. Daily life shows it in small signs. When a colleague asks for help, instead of excuses, you simply say, "Sorry, I can't." When friends invite you, but you want to rest, you answer, "Not tonight." At first, people may be surprised or annoyed. They're used to you explaining. But gradually, they learn you have clear boundaries, and respect for you deepens. More importantly, by saying no without explanation, you send yourself a hidden message. My feelings and needs are valuable enough to exist. This is the opposite of self-abandonment Jung warned of. Instead of abandoning yourself to please others, you stand by yourself, protecting what needs protection. Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." Saying no without explaining is one step toward that. Because refusal means accepting your needs and limits as equal in worth to others' desires. Of course, this journey isn't easy. You may lose relationships, those existing only because you always said yes. But you'll find those who remain are the ones who truly value you, not for obedience, but for authenticity. And wonderfully, when you hold your boundaries, you also learn to respect others. You no longer resent when someone refuses you. You understand no is not denial of love, but protection of wholeness. This is the foundation of mature relationships, where both sides can be themselves without over-explaining. Boundary power is not closure but freedom. When you dare say no without justification, you feel lighter, less drained, with more energy for what matters, passions, dreams, or simply inner peace. And standing firm in those boundaries, you taste new freedom, not from outside, but from within. If this video has touched your journey, click like to affirm you deserve firm boundaries and inner peace. Every like is also a reminder you are not alone. A whole community is learning to protect themselves and love themselves more. Number 6. Wholeness of presence. When the self speaks. There comes a moment in the journey of no longer explaining, when you realize silence, refusal, and mask removal were just preparations. The final step is not against the world outside, but to live fully with yourself. This is when your presence changes. You no longer prove worth, no longer justify. You simply are. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the return to the whole self. Individuation is not becoming someone new, but harmonizing all your fragments, fragile and strong, loving and angry, light and shadow. While trapped in explaining, you only allowed pleasant parts to show. By ceasing excuses, you open space for all aspects to coexist. That wholeness is true strength. Imagine entering a room. Before, you looked at others' eyes to decide what to say, how to smile. Now you just sit, breathe, and be. Not trying to please, not fearing misunderstanding. You still smile if you wish, still speak if you want, but all flows naturally, not from scripts. What radiates is not forced, but seamless. Others sense it. They no longer see someone agreeable through explanations, but feel wholeness in every gesture. Research on attraction shows long-term draw is not looks, talent, or skills, but consistency. When someone lives aligned inside and out, they emit energy others Most important, when you stop explaining, you reclaim self-definition. No longer living by eyes, compliments, or approvals. You stand in your own light, and from there, life shifts. Picture an afternoon at the window. No phone, no one asking, no need to explain silence. Just you, your breath, your presence. In that moment, you feel no lack, need prove nothing. That is the self speaking. Jung once wrote, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." And the journey of no longer explaining is the path you choose to become your true self. You begin by seeing the cost of justification, pass through silence, remove the mask, set boundaries, and finally stand in wholeness. This presence not only changes you, but the world. It makes you a mirror for others to dare live true. It allows you to create relationships of sincerity, not compliance. It frees your energy for what matters, not proving worth. And most of all, it frees you from the invisible prison of explaining. No longer prisoner to others' eyes, no longer chained to being understood. You walk with a new freedom, the freedom of being yourself. One who learns to stop explaining is like a traveler finally laying down a heavy load. No more justifying every feeling, every choice, no longer led by others' gaze. Every silence, every fallen mask, every boundary becomes milestones carving a more mature, whole self. And if you've ever asked, what makes someone truly free? The answer is not logical explanations, but the ability to be fully present, to live your inner truth. That's why they don't need to show off, yet anyone who meets them feels the natural strength and peace radiating. If this video stirs your longing to escape the invisible prison of explaining, share it with those you love. And don't forget to subscribe to continue this journey with us. This journey is not to make you an agreeable version for others, but to find yourself steady, authentic, and radiant, even as the world changes.